Good evening, everyone. This is Amy Morton. I want to welcome you to Lester Miller for Mayor's Town Hall on Public Safety. We have special guests with us tonight, including retired Macon Police Chief Mike Burns and retired Macon Fire Chief Jimmy Hartley. We're excited also to hear from you tonight and to hear your questions and hear your thoughts about public safety in our community. During the call, you will be on mute while these gentlemen speak initially. And if you would like to ask a question, please press 7 on your phone, and then you'll be put in line to ask your question. But we definitely want to hear from you. So I'm going to turn the call over to Lester Miller, who is running for mayor of Macon-Bibb in the upcoming election, and he's going to welcome you and introduce our special guest.
Thank you, Ms. Morton, and thank you, everyone, for being on the Tele-TownHall tonight. This is our third Tele-TownHall meeting that we've had. As you know, and during this corona crisis that we have, it's hard to get in a town hall in person or go door to door. So this is the one way that we have to contact people. Many of you may know that improving public safety and supporting our first responders has been one of my top priorities. I outlined this not just yesterday, but almost 2 years ago when I decided I was going to run for the office of mayor. So far in 2020, there's been 15 homicides in Macon-Bibb County. And what's important to note on that is the sheriff's office is more than 150 deputies short. And we believe that's because the pay is low than surrounding counties, as well as benefits not quite as good. So as mayor, I'm going to work immediately to address our public safety crisis. And I've got several ways to do that. But not only am I going to address the public safety crisis, it's going to help with other issues like poverty and homelessness and mental health. And I want to show you tonight, or if you ask the questions, I'll let you know how we're going to pay for it. I think that's one thing we have to be cognizant of is that you can have all these bright ideas, but if you can't show us how you pay for it, then it creates a problem, a realistic problem. We're fortunate tonight to have two people that have done a great job for Macon-Bibb County in the previous years, and have both retired. We have Chief Mike Burns with us tonight and Chief Jimmy Hartley. And I'm going to ask each one of them to just give you a little information about them before we begin our question and answers tonight. So, Chief Burns, let me hear from you first.
Okay, I'm Chief Mike Burns. I was the Chief of Police at the Macon Police Department for 8.5 years.
Thank you, Chief Burns. And Chief Hartley, how about you?
Hey, good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jimmy Hartley. I served 33 years on the fire department. Chief Burns and I actually entered the fire service on the very same day, Pearl Harbor Day of 1974. We went separate ways, of course, but both served for I served for 33 years and saw a lot of progressive things. Started off under Mayor Thompson and wound up at the beginning of Rickard's term, and saw a lot of progressive things over the years. Grown to love the fire service, the fire department, and the people in the fire department, and just want to see it continue to be a servant to the people of Macon-Bibb County.
All three of you. So I want to remind the audience and those who are still listening or who just joined after I introduced everybody that if you would like to ask a question on the topic of public safety, you have some experts on the phone with you tonight. And you would ask your question by pressing 7 on your phone, and then you'll be added to the list of people who have questions that they'd like to ask tonight. And so and I have one question that is pending for us, so it'll get us started tonight, and it's very simple. We have Timothy who would like to know about officer pay for in our sheriff's department. He says that our pay is lower than surrounding counties, and he would like to know why that is and what you plan to do about it as mayor, Mr. Miller.
Sure. And thank you, Timothy, for asking that question. I think one of the main concerns that people do have in Macon-Bibb County is the number of officers that we need to have on the streets. When we look at the reason most officers leave or don't stay throughout the whole time, it's because the officers pay. the officers' pay is less than surrounding counties, and it should not be, especially here in Bibb County when we have a much larger area. I'll give you one example is the officers' pay for the Board of Education police in Macon for the school board is higher than the starting salary for the police officers in Macon-Bibb County. And they have a little bit different job description and a little area they have to control. So I think officer pay is one of the initial things that we have to do is to immediately increase that. But you can't just start a new deputy off making $40,000 without taking care of the officers that are above them. So you're going to have a step process which each officer that has the equivalent experience also gets that step pay increase at the same time. Yes, it's going to take a little money to do that, but we have to prioritize our budget, and our priority in my budget is going to be public safety. Now, Chief Burns, I know as police chief, you had the obligation to maintain a safe place here in Bibb County yourselves. What are some of the things you think that Bibb County can do to increase the officers that we have here as far as new recruits coming to Macon-Bibb County?
Well, I agree with you. Salary and benefits are the two main selling points when you're trying to recruit people. You also got to give them a good workman's atmosphere and provide them with the best equipment they can have to do their jobs.
Thank you for that. And we have another question, and this is from Mary. She would like to know about, and I don't know if anyone on this call will have an answer for this question, but she would like to know about what we can do to keep more officers on the street protecting the community as opposed to having to be at the jail. Mr. Miller, do you want to start with that question and then maybe the other Chief Hartley and Chief Burns will have some thoughts too?
I can take that call, and that's another question that I get constantly. I think most people know that at least our local sheriff here locally, they have a policy that deputies need to work a certain amount of years at the sheriff's department at the jail and before they actually get on the road. Now, I think Sheriff Davis may have looked at some things recently about changing that policy, so perhaps we can get some people in. But if you're an officer that's been working, say, in Houston County for a while, you want to be able to come to Bibb County and immediately get out on the road or get out into whatever area expertise you have and not have to work at the jail. I think there's various ways that we can address that issue particularly. One of the things that we're looking at as far as the having less officers at the jail and more on the streets is the Justice Works program that I'll explain in just a little bit. But basically putting nonviolent felons that are in jail now, allowing them to go to work every day, and they would go to and from work each and every day and work an 8 to 10 hour shift, and they would earn their own money, but they would also pay for their own room and board, which would help substantiate the officers that we have and put more officers on the streets. So I think that's some of the things we can do. We do need to be more flexible about allowing officers to work in different locations and not just put them in the jail. I think after consolidation, you had a different mentality from the police department, who generally did all the patrol and investigation, and the sheriff generally served the papers and kept the jail. And it's something that the sheriff may need to look at, and it's something as mayor I'm willing to have that conversation with whoever the sheriff is to make sure we do the right thing for Macon-Bibb County.
Thank you. Do others have thoughts about that? Chief Burns, go ahead.
I agree. We need to get more people on the street. I think one reason they've been going to the jail first is to give them some experience in how to deal with some of the people they go deal with on the street. Plus, that's where they can develop confidential informers. And on the flip side, you have some people that's been police officers, they're highly qualified, and they might have been on the road 5 or 6 years. They do not want to start in the jail and wait 3 or 4 years. So there needs to be a way the highly qualified men can get on the road quicker and help answer calls and investigate the crimes.
Oh, thank you. We have another question, and this is from Gavin Flanders. And Mr. Flanders, I'm going to put you live, and it will take just a moment to click over. And you are live, Mr. Flanders. You can ask your question.
All right, good deal. Good evening, everyone. Chief Hartley, good to hear you out and about and doing what you can to help the public safety issue. But Lester, my question to you, over the past few budget cycles, pension and employee pay has been a real hot topic. What are your plans to not so much help that, but to one, protect the pension, and then also employee pay? I know you touched on that a while ago in your first question.
Okay. The number one, as far as employee pay, we're going to have to raise the starting salary. And not only have to raise the starting salaries, we're going to have to give everybody a step up. Now, I'm not just talking about the fire department. I'm talking about the police department and the fire department. So both of those need to take a careful look at first responders in general and those that support them to make sure that we are competitive in our salaries across the line, and also make sure that we give them all the tools they need to work with. In regards to the pension to me is non-negotiable. I've heard some talk from recently about people wanting to cut the pensions for the police and fire. They said they're too rich. They're bankrupt in the Bibb County.
Well, let me touch on that. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. And that was what I was going to touch on. Public safety pension is 102% funded even during this COVID crisis, and where we're seeing an economic downturn, we're still extremely funded. Your opponent, Blake Sullivan, he has boldly stated, hey, I'm going to cut pensions and not get salary increases. And that's one of the things that has got the public safety employees scared of wanting to know, hey, we need to be protected. And
well, so there's a couple ways to address that. Yeah, number one, the pension has already been earned. Those people work hard. Some working 30 and 40 years to earn a pension, and they accepted, a harsher environment. They accepted the dangers of going out there each and every day to perform their job, and a lot of times they accepted less pay because they wanted a pension. In the fire department, the police department, you're not going to work as long as you do sitting behind a desk for the most part. You're going to have a lot more wear and tear and stress on your body, and I think that's one of the things that people have to understand. Number one, you can't do it. It's illegal. It's a violation of law to cut the pensions of people who have already vested and without any exceptions. And there are no exceptions. I've looked at the law. I happen to be an attorney. I've researched the issue, and you can't do it. You can't touch those. You can't convert them to anything. So in my administration, the pensions are going to stay solid. They're going to stay funded, and they're non-negotiable. Besides being legally, illegal to do so, it's morally wrong. These men and women have put their life on the line to protect Bibb County, and we can't backdoor them by trying to save money and balance our budget on the backs of these good men and women, and I'm not going to do it in my administration. So I appreciate your question tonight. We're going to have this debate, hopefully. Thank you.
Can I add one thing?
You. Go ahead. Yes, please.
What most people realize that when you work for the city of Macon, law enforcement, and I think the fire department the same way, when we retired, we don't draw Social Security. We're not eligible.
Correct.
So all we have is our pension.
Right. That's a very, very, thank you for adding that. And Mr. Flanders, thank you for your question. And we have another question from Lewis. Lewis, I'm going to make you live in just 1 second right now. And Lewis, you are live. You can ask your question. Lewis, are you with us? You might be muted. I don't have you muted, but you might be. I can ask a question, and then he grew up in New Orleans, where fire and police are episodic to Mardi Gras. Two of his friends' fathers were auxiliary policemen, and they worked through the year only in certain circumstances, but were fully trained and empowered, and that helped the city thrive. Has anyone given any thought to auxiliary police officers? I'm going to pick on Chief Burns and ask him if he's has any experience with that and would like to comment on it first, and then whoever else would like to answer, please.
When I was the chief, we looked into that, and we were pushing it hard because it would alleviate some of our shortages when we were short. But at that time, nobody on city council was really interested in it.
Any other thoughts on that question? Well, thank you, Louis, for your question. We have Sandra with us who has a question and would like me to share it. So the question is, downtown, Sandra works downtown, and of course is not working right now. She works in a restaurant, and she's concerned about police presence downtown in the evenings as bars and restaurants close, and is wondering what can be done to improve that. Mr. Miller, you want to start with that, and then we can go from there?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I know it's a concern for everyone, not just downtown, but other places. My understanding is there are a couple, 2 or 3 nights, maybe starting on Saturday or Sunday night through Monday, we don't have an active deputy that's actually scheduled to work in downtown area. Only in emergency extreme situations. It's not because they don't want to have protection there. It's just because we're 150 officers short. And it's not like the old precincts we used to have multiple deputies coming on shift after shift after shift. Now, since consolidation and since we had a depleted officers going to other places or retiring or taking on other jobs with better benefits, we are depleted. And until we get the officer count up, it's going to be hard to fully staff these precincts. It's something we're going to have to do. It's not going to be an easy chore. I think there's a way we can do that without imposing new taxes on the taxpayers. Sheriff Davis says we're 150 deputies short. Perhaps we can work with less deputies, but we can't work with 150 less. If we get it down to something like 100, perhaps that can do it. The justice program that I talked about earlier, where you have nonviolent felons out there working in the community, those are your nonviolent crimes that you can pay for. We'll take officers out of the jail and put them on the streets so we can have better patrols to each of these neighborhoods, community policings. There's many ways we can look at saving money. I talked about before the possibility of having an OLAS in Macon-Bibb County where we do 100% tax break for all the citizens of Bibb County that own homes. And part of that 100% tax break, they'll get that directly off their taxes for their homes. But at the same time, we can designate 1 meal for public safety, and we can fully fund public safety. Public safety is very important, and that's something we can do without raising taxes, and actually roll taxes back for most of the taxpayers.
Thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts about the question about officers being available downtown after restaurants and bars close?
I feel like once the sheriff's department are able to hire more deputies, they might go back to a downtown office. We had T3s, the 3-wheel scooters you stood on, and we had bicycles, and those officers were assigned just to ride them downtown on the sidewalks and meet and greet not only the people down there but also the business owners. But I don't think it's possible for him to do it till he can get more deputies.
And I want to remind everybody who's listening that if you would like to ask a question, please just press 7 on your phone and you'll be placed in line to ask your question. We would love to hear from more of you. We have an additional question from Robin, who has seen an ad of yours, Lester, that says that you won't lay one more brick until the public safety crisis is fixed, and she wants to know what that means. What does that mean when you say you won't lay one more brick until the public safety crisis is fixed?
That's a good question. I've been getting that a lot lately, especially since they've been seeing those commercials, and it's not meant to be funny or derogatory, but basically what it's saying is we do a lot of building here. We do a lot of building of blocks of nice things that we use money for, and nice parks and nice recreation centers, and all that things have their place. But what I'm saying is when I'm mayor and I get sworn in January, all projects are going to cease that day. We're not going to lay one more brick. We're not going to have millions of dollars spent on, say, a courthouse or other things until we get our public safety crisis taken care of. And I really mean it. I think we need to force the hand on the county and the commissioners and all the partners to say, look, this is the plan we're going to have. We're going to figure out how to fund this. We're going to figure out what the need is, and we're going to recruit the best qualified officers, and that's going to be the fire department and the police department, because we should be able to do that here in Macon-Bibb County. And I'm not going to be second best to anyone. We want to be first in everything we do, public safety, business, and we're not going to lay another brick. It's going to cease altogether until we get public safety under control. Everybody I talk to, their number one issue is public safety. I've been saying this for 2 years. We can't continue to have 30 and 40 murders every year and say we live in a safe environment. So things have got to change, and it's going to change under my administration, and we won't lay one more brick until our public safety crisis is fixed completely. And that's what I meant by the brick comment.
Thank you. We appreciate that, and we have several people who are waiting to ask questions. I'm going to take this question from Samuel first, and this question might be one our retired fire chief can answer. Samuel's concerned about the number of houses, the arsons that have occurred, apparent arsons that have occurred in the downtown areas with the historic properties, and wonders what can be done about that and about finding out who's responsible for those crimes. Any thoughts about that? Anybody have any thoughts about those? I know we've all heard about in the news about some of the historic homes that have burned downtown. Any thoughts about how we can solve that or prevent that?
I could mention when it comes to abandoned houses and abandoned stores, because that breeds people that shouldn't be there. It's doing drugs, or some of them even trying a place to stay, but they create fires inside, which burns down everything around it, especially abandoned houses in the blighted areas. So
blight is is a contributor to that. So that's well, thank you. I have a question from Wes, and I'm gonna put you on the live with your question, and you should be live now.
Hey, I agree with all the priorities that I hope the new mayor has set, and I hope that they come to fruition. However, I believe all of us know that for that to happen, it can't be just the mayor that we elect. It has to be almost the entire new city council. Otherwise, none of this comes to fruition, because their priorities are obviously different right now. Do you anticipate that we might have such a new city council or county commission on the next election?
Yes, sir, Wes. Thank you for asking that question. It is important. One of the things when I started to run for mayor, I determined was, what good is a mayor to get elected if you don't have people to work with you for the same common purpose? And that's something I've looked at over the last couple of years, and I don't see them working well together for the good of the order. So one of the things that I've been looking at doing is building relationships. If you know, I've been on the school board. The first time I got on the school board, we had a divided board of 4-4. But guess what? We come together, we work through the issues, and we focus on the things that was important and what we were elected to do. It's the same thing I'm going to do when I go to the county as mayor. We have 9 commissioners, and those commissioners are going to have to work well with the mayor, and we're going to work together. One good thing I do know is we're going to have a turnover on this commission. I do expect to have 4 or 5 new commissioners this time. So we're not going to have the same people that you had there each time. You're going to have a different atmosphere, a different group of people, but you're going to have a mayor that's willing to work with everyone, no matter if you're black, white, if you're male or female, if you're a Republican or Democrat. We have to put aside all those things and learn to work together. I think we can find common ground in each of the areas that I have to work with. Just like we have two different people running for sheriff this time. We have both a Republican and a Democrat. Well, the mayor needs to work with whoever gets elected for that position, and I plan to do just that. I want to work with everybody, but there's going to be some give and take, but we're going to do what's right for the community. So I'm looking forward to working with the new county commission. I do believe we're going to have a new group of people, and I look forward to working with them when they get elected at the same time that I do. Thank you.
And Wes, did that answer your question? Did you have a follow-up?
No, I didn't. I pretty much knew or thought I knew the answer to my question before I asked it, but I am certainly glad to be reassured that I was right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Amy, this is Jimmy Hartley. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Amy, I want to apologize to the entire group. I'm on a cell phone, and I was turning my speakerphone on and off to get in and out of the conversations, and I accidentally hit mute on my phone. So I wasn't being rude or shy. I was just I was on mute, and I was trying to talk, but no one heard me. So I apologize for that. Could I answer briefly Garen Flanders' question and the other gentleman about arson briefly?
Yes,
sure.
please. Please.
Okay, Garen, thanks for calling in, and I appreciate that. As I know, and even as Chief Burns knows, that the average career in public safety is about 35 years. And excuse my language, but 35 years on a public safety person in this city and county is hell. I mean, it is. When you spend almost every day of those 35 years facing the kind of physical, mental, and emotional challenges that they do, and you add to that, the infectious, we're talking about COVID-19 now. Well, we've been fighting infectious diseases for decades. They're subjected to people spitting, cutting, stabbing, and more. All those things. Respiratory hazards that firefighters face, physical injuries. Over a 35-year period, that's pretty extreme. And I know that 401k is being pushed pretty hard right now, but we really need to make sure that we maintain a defined benefit plan for our public safety people. And the other component to that is, after that 35 years, then you're at the age, your body can take all that fairly well while you're young and middle-aged, but when you get to retirement age, that's when your immune system and your body's beginning to break down. So, don't just leave them by the wayside. A few years ago, a stipend, which I believe sheriff employees already got, was added to the pension fund for those people to help pay for a Medicare supplement or, something to help their Medicare out, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they're going to face some pretty serious medical challenges even after they retire. So, I feel very strongly about that all that needs to be maintained, at least for public safety people. And as far as the arson question, quickly, that as Chief Burns said, that's basically a law enforcement function, but we do have arson investigators, which are expert at that, at investigating arson, and we also have the backup of the State Fire Marshal's office, toll-free line where people can get a $10,000 reward for information that leads in a prosecution for arson. But arson is one of the hardest crimes to get a conviction on. So I know we always did, and I know they still are keeping their noses to the grindstone on the arson problem. And it's as big a hazard to firefighters as probably anybody, because they're the ones that have to go in there, and usually those fires are pretty well advanced before the companies get there, which exacerbates the danger to them. So they certainly want to do everything they can to alleviate arson problem.
Well, thank you for that. We have time for probably we have one person who's waiting to ask. I'm going to this is J.V. Kirkland, and I'm going to make you live right now, and then we have one last question, and then we'll be close to being finished. But if anybody has a question that they would now like to ask, now's their last opportunity. So click on over and hit 7 on your phone and let us know you'd like to ask a question. And I assume this is Mr. Kirkland, but I'm going to make you live now. You're live. Yes, Mr. Kirkland.
Yeah, okay. No, my question is that the traffic violations in Macon is horrible. You can drive any day of the week in Macon, Georgia, and either get run off the road, cut in front of, pushed off the road, and people are not being stopped and fined, and on top of that, they're not being made pay the fine. That needs to happen.
Okay. Any thoughts about that? Chief
I can
Burns,
address
I
that
know
first.
or you want to go first? Mr.
Yeah, I'll go
Miller?
ahead and address that. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Kirkham, for calling in. And everything gets back to the root of the problem. It's really hard to be out there policing all these traffic violations and speeding, and we got people going through neighborhoods going 45, 50 miles per hour, and nothing we can do about it because we don't have enough officers on the scenes. One of the things I have proposed is that we bring back some of these retired officers that can work part-time. These officers can do patrol. They can work at the courthouse. They may be able to fill in over the jail. It will save the county money because we pay millions of dollars of overtime that we have to pay, both the police and the fire, and it costs us a time and a half. So we can cut down on some of those speeding and running stop signs, et cetera, by getting those tickets out there, which, by the way, creates a safer environment and also creates more revenue for the county. And your other question about why don't we put more of these people in jail and pay their fines, if you don't know about the process there, there's been a lot of gaps there on going to court and paying your fines because of the shortage. But the other thing is it costs $55 a day to house somebody at the jail. A lot of these tickets are anywhere $50, $75, $100, and we've been losing money on a lot of those things. What a better alternative is to turn this to community service. We can have these people that want to speed through our neighborhoods, run these stop signs, and if they can't pay the money or can't pay it up front, let's let them work it off. We've got a lot of trash on the side of the road that needs to be picked up, and we can have a cleaner environment at the same time, and perhaps if they don't have the money, they can work it off. I think when people have to do hard work, sometimes their opinions change on whether or not they come up with that money to pay those fines. So that may be a way that we can kill two birds with one stone. Certainly it's something I want to look into as a mayor, but it's going to take cooperation with the Sheriff's Department as well. But that's a very good question. I hope I was able to answer that question in a fit way for you.
Mr. Kirkland, did you get your question answered, or did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, well, another alternative is if they don't pay the fine, take the driver's license away.
Yes, sir. That's always an alternative. But unfortunately, a lot of these folks, if they're not going to pay their fine, they're not going to worry about driving without a license, and it just compounds the problem that we have now. But I do think that if we can give an opportunity to pay that money, if they can't do it up front, then they can work it off. And I think a lot of people seem to find the money when they have to go do good hard work. And I certainly wouldn't mind driving down Eisenhower Parkway and seeing people pick up trash that people throw out the door all the time. So I think we can definitely look at that. But we need more officers on the ground if we're talking about doing a better job at patrolling, because they're simply not available right now. And thank you for your question.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. One last question, and Louis, I'm going to make you live right now with your question. He has a question about well, I'll let him tell you. Let's see. Louis, you're live. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, I would, and I'd like to apologize. I didn't understand how this worked, so I didn't listen to the first question, which is, I'm from New Orleans and volunteer police and whatever. I have another question, though. I'm about to get $1,200 from President Trump's re-election campaign, and I'd like to know if there's a way that I can put that $1,200 to work for the police and fire departments. I would gladly volunteer to do that and like to start a trend. Is there any legal way for citizens to do that and designate where the money goes? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
I'll be happy to answer that.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
My best advice, off the top of my head, would be to go to your local hardware store and buy as many smoke detectors as you like. Take them down to the chief's office and donate them, and they'll make sure that they're given out to people who need them the most, in some of the most depressed areas where most fire deaths occur. That's one idea.
Thank you. Any other thoughts about that? If people would like to contribute to, if they want to give directly to helping with the funding shortage that we face. Any other thoughts on that? I think that's a good idea.
But the police department, which is the sheriff's department now, we had people they would use money to actually buy lasers, so they could check for speed and other equipment that we couldn't get budgeted at the time, so they would be donated to the police department.
Right. And Amy, if I may, Lewis, I think that's an excellent opportunity to start a movement. We need folks like you to do good things like this with their stimulus money. I think it'd be a great opportunity to have a conversation. If you don't mind contacting me on tomorrow, we'll get together. Maybe we can start a group or talk to a foundation. One thing that's important, though, if we're going to donate for this cause and you're going to donate your stimulus check, we want to make sure it goes to the intended purpose. We don't want to go any fund where it's used for other purpose other than taking care of our good men and women at the fire and police departments. I know right now they've been short on masks, and their safety has been one of my concerns, sanitizer, all the proper equipment that we have, especially during this COVID crisis. And I think what better use could we have of that $1,200 stimulus money than putting it to good use for these folks. So if you don't mind, give me a call tomorrow. We'll put our heads together and figure out what needs to be done to make sure the money gets to its intended purposes, and maybe a lot of people will join in to your challenge. Thank you for your call again.
Can I add one more thing real quick?
Yes, please. Sure.
One other way to really help in law enforcement, if you have extra money like that, is donate to Crime Stoppers, because they pay for tips, and a lot of the crimes, especially the homicides, are solved by tips from, it might be one other person or two other person that heard firsthand about it from the person that committed the crime. And they won't come forward, but they will go to Crime Stoppers. They don't have to give the name, but they give really valuable information.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to turn this back over to Mr. Miller in just a moment. I want to thank everybody who called in tonight. Public safety is the number one issue in Macon, and we can certainly tell that by the participation on this call and the questions that we received. Mr. Miller, would you like to finish us up here?
Sure, I'll close it out. First of all, I really want to thank Chief Mike Burns and Chief Jimmy Hartley for giving up your time. I know you guys are both retired. You've done your service for Bibb County, and we certainly appreciate that. And you went out of your way tonight to be here to answer these questions, and I think you've done a wonderful job. So let me personally thank both of you for being part of this Tele-TownHall tonight. I think you've really done a good service to the community, and I thank you for both being here tonight.
Thank you.
Secondly, yes, sir.
Anytime you need to.
Thank you. I also want to make sure that everyone knows that we continue to have these Tele-TownHalls, because it's a very important, especially in today's COVID crisis situation, that we be as transparent and open as possible, that we ask the hard questions, and if we don't know the answer to those questions, that we do our own research and make sure that we have a good advice to give the folks out there. Public safety is our number one priority. I make no mistake when I tell people that. It's not that we only want to give police and fire raises. We will give everybody a raise that we can afford to give a raise, but there has to be a priority. Just like there's a priority in our homes, we have to prioritize our budget, and we have to do that with police and fire, and we're just too short in our community, and we can't afford. It's an investment, and it's something that we're going to have to make sacrifices to make sure we get. And I think we've got ways to do that without raising taxes. So we appreciate everybody being here today. We appreciate your comments. Please go to my Facebook page, Lester Miller for Mayor, and you can make any comments you want on there, ask any questions you want to. If you don't feel comfortable, then send me a private message, and I'll do my best to answer those. We only have about 20-something days before early voting begins, and we want to make sure that everybody makes an informed decision, whether you vote by absentee ballot, whether you vote on May the 18th through June the 5th, early voting, or whether you show up on Election Day to make a vote. We want to make sure that everybody votes counts, and we're here to answer your questions. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. Thank you, Ms. Morton, for moderating this today. And once again, I'd like to thank Chief Mike Burns and Chief Jimmy Hartley for your input and the questions that you've answered tonight.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody, and good night. You'll hear from us again with more opportunities.